Welcome back to the Glen Alex Show. I'm your host, Glen Alex. Each episode of the Glen Alex Show focuses on a different aspect of health because I believe in total health. And I am on a mission to help as many people as I can be joyful, connected, confident, and complete the life experience I call wealth, WELLTH, which is health plus other riches. Now, just think about that for a moment. If more of us were in pursuit of living in total health or even living in total health, the world would be safe and loving for everyone. So I hope you join us on this journey and enjoy this episode that I'm pretty interested in because I am definitely going to learn something new about health and well-being. Please help me welcome my guest, Dr. Greg Elliott, an osteopath. Hi, Greg.
Hi, how are you doing?
I am doing well. How are you?
Fantastic. It's early in the week. It was a holiday here in our province on Monday, so it's kind of like the start of my week. So I got a lot of energy. I'm excited to dive in.
Okay, what was the holiday?
It's Truth and Reconciliation Day. So it's with our Indigenous populations. There was a lot of uncoverings of past discretions that has happened with our government in regards to the schools that they were provided with, and so with that as a day of reflection with a lot of our Indigenous culture around positivity and growth going forward.
Okay, very nice, very nice. Well, I hope you had a great holiday weekend.
Yeah, it was great.
Awesome. Well, let's definitely dive in. So take a moment and just tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, my name is Greg Elliott. I'm an osteopath up here in Vancouver, also exercise physiologist, and so I'm in the clinic a couple days a week, primarily focusing on what I like to call the invisible illnesses, people that are suffering from chronic pain syndromes like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, depression, PTSD, anxiety. So a lot of the typical illnesses and diseases that the medical system don't have a great reputation of solving. And it really takes an integrative approach. And that's the kind of approach that I've taken. I've surrounded myself with a phenomenal clinical team of different practitioners from different areas. And we focus on, as you talk about, and everything that this podcast is about whole health, the person, the individual themselves, and try not to have a siloed approach where it's specifically one type of modality being done. And we sit down as a team and we discuss, our more complex cases to really, making sure that we're dealing with all areas of health and well-being and not just, in our specific domain in our area.
Okay, excellent. Now, what led you to this work?
That's a really good question. So I've always had an interest in health. I grew up as an athlete, focusing on high performance for long periods of time. And so that was my area of expertise, but with a few, I'd say, physical ailments of my family and seeing some of the decline and what's going with them, I was very intrigued of how can we improve health and well-being, but really, right? Not just, we saw the failures of the medications that we thought were revolutionary and just still people they're staying alive and not necessarily living life.
Right.
And so that's not what I wanted. No, I got obsessed with the modalities that can, sustain and maintain a healthy living. And so exercise is one of those areas that I thought was a phenomenal way. So I did my master's degree in exercise physiology And as you do when you graduate from school, you leave there thinking that I have all the tools to solve the world's problems with that. And as I started to get into practice, I realized that I had a very small skill set
Yes.
into that. And so I started my osteopathic training in Vancouver in 2015, graduated in 2021 from there. And that gave me a lot more kind of tools and modalities to be able to kind of help. And along the way, learning the complexity of health and well-being and what is actually comprised in those specific areas, and talking to people. And one of the things that kind of led me down this path of looking at this whole person is, like I said, I had exercise as my primary modality, but how are physical therapists getting people better? How are psychologists and clinical counselors? How do medical doctors? Those people are getting people, health coaches, group classes, and so these all provide benefit, right? But they don't fall within how are these people? What are they tapping into that I'm not? And so I got very curious of surrounding myself with individuals that have the same goal, which is, living long, healthy lives, but not maybe the same, background or values that I have, that I think that is most important more than others, and having that and being challenged of truly looking at the biopsychosocial health of an individual, and each, weighting each of those as itself comparatively to others, not one's more important than the other, but as a whole person, and be able to figure out how can we best help those people.
Right. And it definitely takes an open mind to make itself available to learning new information, and not just seek what you already know and confirm that. So
completely. Right.
Yeah.
And to realize, again, the one example that I typically bring up is we think of mental illness and typically in the one side of it. And from my side, it's like that very, biological sense, right? It's biochemistry in regards to the neuro, but don't realize that our environment, our being, our past experiences are going to impact our biochemistry just as much as what we can do from the other way around. It's bidirectional or typically omnidirectional in regards to this specific condition. And so you can't look at it the one direction. I have the way that my mind works is that one direction, but I want to be challenged of like, is that the right decision for this individual right now? Is that the approach that we need to be able to go? Or are there alternative ways that we should start with first based on that person that's in front of me?
Right. Well, I totally appreciate the whole person approach and dealing with patients as individuals. So thank you. Now, I want to learn about heart rate variability. So please tell us what that is.
Yeah, it's starting to become more mainstream now. When I first started, even medical doctors and other practitioners, cardiologists were looking at me like I'm, speaking some sort of weird thing that I was kind of bringing out of thin air. But it's become more from a medical standpoint, from a health practitioner standpoint, it's become pretty, more understood and more widely accepted. And it's now starting to cross over to the general consumer. Okay. So my master's degree in exercise physiology, my thesis was on non-invasive ways of measuring heart function. So we're trying to figure out ways to, in the clinical populations, measure the function of the heart non-invasively without having to do catheters or, all the type of stuff. What are ways? I got introduced to heart rate variability at the time. And that's when I got first introduced to it and was curious about it all. And I didn't include in my thesis because it had to do with exercise as a part of it. And but when I got back home, I started to look at it a little bit more. And I always start off with saying, it's different than heart rate. I think we're very familiar with heart rate, 60 beats per minute, 90 beats per minute, all those type of things. But what's actually significantly more important to our health and longevity is the frequency of which those beats occur. Okay. Right. So Glenn, you and I can have 60 beats per minute as our resting heart rate, right? Whether through the nighttime or when we wake up, we're at rest, we're relaxing, we can have 60 beats per minute identical. But my heart rate beats like a metronome, super consistent, right? On the second, every single second. But yours varies. It goes up and it speeds up and it slows down, right? In this nice kind of rhythmic pattern.
Okay.
What research shows is that you are in a healthier, happier state than I am.
Okay.
Very counterintuitive to what most people think, because we think of what's health? Health is homeostasis. We have these very, narrow windows to our blood sugar needs to be regulated, our blood pressure needs to be here, or everything needs to be super consistent in regards to what's going on. But that's not the way that heart rate variability works. More variability is a person is a healthier, they're mentally more, they have more emotional control, they're more connected with other people, they have the ability to be able to do so. And so through a wide range of whole health biomarkers, right, or markers in general, heart rate variability should be higher than lower.
Okay, so make sure I understand. Heart rate variability is the time in between heartbeats.
Exactly. Yeah. So it measures each heartbeat from one beat to the next.
Okay.
Right. Now, what heart rate is well, how many beats actually occur within that minute?
Okay.
Right. And you and I can have very similar, but the rate at which those beats occur is what heart rate variability measures. And so as we're relaxing, you want to actually see your heart rate speed up and slow down. So you would have more variable times in between each beat than consistent. I don't want to see a heart rate that beats on the second every second,
okay,
or very consistently from time to time. Now that's at rest, right? So when we're relaxing, we're recovering. That's what we want to be able to see, is we want to have more variability in our resting heart rate.
Interesting. So did you develop the way to measure it?
No, so it was first kind of research. I mean, truly as it is today is about in the 50s, and a lot of the space programs were starting to be able to use this. It's used a lot in neonatal and in early, in pregnancy for a lot of individuals to look at the health of the baby. So there's preliminary studies that were done in specific areas. And
okay.
so this was typically done by an ECG, which, for heart rhythms, to look at how your heart's doing and all that. And so that was for the longest time the gold standard. And so it wasn't necessarily applied to the general consumer for long periods of time, because you needed very accurate results.
Okay.
Very specific, because it has to do with milliseconds of a heart rate. So you have to be very, very accurate in regards to what's going on. A couple beats off, and the measurements is completely wonky. So, when wearables first started to come out, like Fitbits and Apple Watches and things like that, it was tough for them to even get heart rate.
Okay.
And so if you can't get heart rate right, you're not going to get heart rate variability right.
Okay.
And so the only way to measure for a long period of time was in a laboratory setting with very expensive equipment. Now, with the advancements of these wearable technologies that are on there with different light frequencies and all that, we can actually get pretty darn accurate measures of people's heart rate variability through looking at some of this information. And so the measurements were all there. It just took a lot of technological advances. But for the last decade, I've been using heart rate variability information with my patients and clients to use as a primary biomarker. And now it's a $99 Fitbit. You can get heart rate variability measurements that are pretty darn accurate.
Interesting. So what is the difference between heart rate variability, which is the time in between heartbeats, and arrhythmia?
Great question. They're very similar in that standpoint, right? So you can have high heart rate variability and have an arrhythmia, right? So, atrial fibrillation, people will have very high heart rate variability. If you have a lot of PVCs, premature ventricular contractions, you can get some high heart rate variabilities. And when I consult with people, sometimes you see these astronomically high numbers, right? That are just like off the charts. Like you're 2 times an Olympic level athlete in regards to the amount of variability you have, which is, and the number one thing I say to people is make sure, just double check that there's not some sort of arrhythmia, right? Okay. So heart rate variability means more variability in sinus rhythm. So we have a normal heart rhythm. There's no abnormalities, no arrhythmias. There's nothing like that are what's going on. So this information is provided in the absence of arrhythmias. So one of the things in regards to a lot of studies is making sure that you have none of these. You have sinus rhythm. You are in sinus rhythm when you do these metrics. And the softwares are getting pretty good at picking those abnormal beats out. Okay. This is a natural phenomenon that happens within the body. Independent of arrhythmias. So these are all normal occurring beats.
Okay.
Yeah.
So an arrhythmia is an abnormal beat.
Arrhythmia would be some sort of abnormal beat where it's the atria, the top of the heart, contracts faster, or the bottom, where you get this abnormal thing where it's not a we call normal sinus rhythm, or NSR. It's not an NSR beat. It is an abnormal beat. So this is heart rate variability is a measurement of all your normal rhythmic beats. in the absence of all of those arrhythmias, if necessary.
Okay, interesting. Now, it sounds like that heart rate variability can be used as a measure of the whole person.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how that is and how we make this connection between it all is okay. Well, we want more variability in our heart rate at rest. Right. So what is this actually a measure of? Like, what is this actually really measuring in our body that makes it meaningful? This is a measurement of our autonomic nervous system. It measures the amount of parasympathetic or our rest and digest system that's being active.
Okay.
Our vagus nerve is the most active parasympathetic nerve in our body, controls the most amount of rest and digest functions through the entire body. And that's more innervation of that nerve. So that nerve being more active increases the amount of variability we have in our heart rate.
Okay.
Right? When we're stressed, our body's in a stress state. It removes that vagal tone, removes that innervation, and the amount of innervation that's going to the heart, goes to the sympathetic system to go fight what's going on, and then our heart rate becomes more metronome-like.
Okay.
So it's a measure of how much our body is under physical, emotional, social, spiritual stress.
Okay. So I'm in traffic.
Yeah.
And I'm angry about it, though it's the same route every day.
Yeah.
That's just the city I live in, right? That's going to affect my heart rate variability. At the same time, it's going to probably trigger some anxiety and some outbursts and some unhealthy eating habits, right? I'm going to emotionally eat to calm myself down. A different scenario of stress is maybe graduating from college. It's a very it's youth stress. It's a positive event, yet it's still stress. Now, would that have the same effect on HRV as the traffic?
That is a phenomenal question, and this is one it's a little more nuanced, but I'll be able to kind of like give a high level overview of this.
Okay.
Right? And so my quote that I always say in presentations is that Dr. Hans Selye, who came up with the word stress, and shout out to Canadian endocrinologist, but he came up with the word stress. And he says that it's not stress that kills us. It's our reaction to it. So that, depending on how bad that traffic is, it's our reaction to that. It could be to the point that someone cuts you off, you get very upset, and that stays with you for the rest of the day.
Yes.
Right? Where the graduation, great, happy, awesome, elated. But in regards to that response, right? It's intense in the moment, but we recover and be able to get more of a normal type of a stress level on a very quick basis, right?
Okay.
From that standpoint, where something else can be, significantly more impactful for our mind and what we're going on and saying, oh, because of traffic and now I'm late and now I'm behind all day. And then that's your excuse the entire day of what's going on and that, and then now I have to go home in this. And then, so you ruminate about it all, you magnify the problem in all those different areas. And so it's not necessarily like one of the sayings in exercise physiology. It's kind of, and it translates over to what's going on in regards to our kind of overall stress management. They say it's like, you can never overtrain. You can just under recover.
Okay.
So meaning the fact that we can train as much as we want, but if we don't allocate time to be able to recover from that stress and relax, regenerate, and be able to go, if we don't have adequate time into there, we'll be in a continuous state of overtraining and stress. And it's just going to pile on as you go forward. Stress is a positive thing, as we know. Like, we need stress in our lives, but it's about making sure that we don't let it control. It's not majority of what's going on to that standpoint. Now, as we know, there's so many more forms of stress that are out there for us. Before, way more simple, and I'm sure this has been talked about for a lot of different people. Is before it was mainly food, making sure you survive. It's fight or flight. It's about survival at that point, right? A lot less threats than we do have now, where we have, world impact news that affects us. Everything that's going on with politics. We have these, social media influencers that are showing that their lives are so great. Well, why can't we be there? And about these material things that we be able to provide and traffic, and the foods that are more satiating for us on an immediate basis, but and what we need, but where we have overabundance of food and all these different areas. So we have more avenues to accumulate more of this stress, which is the problem, is that we don't remove ourselves from it, right? People wake
Right.
up, they read emails, oh, I got to do this today, do that, got to get kids ready, got to do this, now I got to drive in traffic. As I go home and sit in the middle of the night and start to look at all these people having so many great times on the vacation, or how they're living the life that I want people to live, and then I have to go to sleep and try to recover during all that. It's like there's no time to recover from anything because we're bombarded by the stimuli and all these stresses on a continuous basis. Is that, yes, we are overstressed because we don't have the time to shut down and relax and recover and regenerate.
Right. We're definitely overstimulated. Definitely. Now, in addition to how we respond to stress, what are some things or activities that negatively impact HRV?
Yeah, negatively. So the obvious ones are there. So the one that's a big shocker for most individuals is alcohol. I think we all know alcohol can impact our health and well-being, but I don't think people really know how much it actually impacts that. I had a patient that was using alcohol as a coping mechanism for her pain.
Okay.
And, knew it wasn't good, but it helps me deal with it, right? As we got her on the wearable, so to see the heart rate variability, she goes, I knew alcohol was bad. I didn't know how bad it actually was, right? And it is now almost a year that she's now not had a sip of alcohol.
Okay.
Right? It's that feedback mechanism to that for her to understand. Alcohol is a gigantic one that has a significant negative impact.
Okay.
Other is going to be high amounts of like life stress, right? From day to day, right? If you're going through a big day with a lot of things going on. I have a lot of big meetings. Have a fight with my spouse, my partner, kids aren't behaving, eat late, all that type of stuff, all can have negative impacts into that. But even like acutely, you can look at exercise. Exercise has a negatively acute negative impact, a negative acute impact in regards to heart rate variability. Because if I train really hard and go and exercise, my body's in that recovery state, and so it's stressed, and I gave it a significant amount of stress to what's going on. The big key is to that is obviously what's the rebound from that. That's the biggest thing. Is it a positive or negative rebound when it comes to that specific intervention? Life stress can be very beneficial, but if you don't control it regularly and you don't manage it in an appropriate way, it becomes too much of a stress. I use the example. Exercise is good. Too much exercise is not good, right? Because if you think about it this way, exercise, the reason why it's relatively simple, it's 30 minutes to maximum an hour a day of something, right?
Right.
In and out, boom, boom, boom. I don't have to deal with it any other time other than that, right? So it's a very easy stress to be able to manage. When you start to be able to deal with financial stress or work stress or family stress or any of these type of things, it is a 24-hour, typically, brain continuing to work. It is a consistent stress into what's going on. Imagine you having to be on a bike for 18 hours a day.
Wouldn't happen.
Right? Your body, we give up. Like you see, like your body's too stressed. I can't do it anymore. Like that, you get the fatigue, you get this. Like it's a lot of the same symptomology of what's going on. And it's because it's like you can't imagine doing that for 18 hours, but you ruminating about some sort of problem or magnifying it or having, self-doubt into what's going on, like you decrease the amount of agency or gratitude that you have, it's just going to continuously eat at you on a continuous basis and deplete your resources, deplete your energy, and you won't be able to have that recovery state that you need. You can't disconnect from it. And so so the big things is to sum up, alcohol is a big one. Okay. Exercise will have a negative impact. High inflammatory foods is another. And a high stressful environment is the fourth.
Okay. Now, can you predict what types of ailments someone will have with a low HRV?
That's another great question. So right now you can't necessarily predict. There are things that we're getting closer to understand, that you can get better understanding on based on heart rate variability. I know I've seen it over the last 10 years of looking at heart rate variability and heart disease in regards to what's going on. Do people have heart disease versus not? And so there's some preliminary understanding of that. I don't think it's great yet, but we're getting there. There's fitness levels. People that typically have high or heart rate variability will have higher fitness levels, especially when you get to a specific category. And again, arrhythmias aren't there, which is predominant in the aerobic athletes. There's also emotional states, which is interesting in the moment. There's a couple of companies out there looking at getting real-time HRV data and looking to the point of, can I determine, based on what you said, the intensity of emotion, but also the valence of emotion? Can I determine, are they agitated versus are they content, or are they calm? And so there's information that can be done out there. But in regards to saying, you look at a specific number and be like, oh, this person has diabetes. No, we won't be able to do that. It's not diagnostic.
Okay.
But to me, and this is what the beauty about HRV is to me, that it is a whole health biomarker.
Okay.
The problem is I can't differentiate between cardiovascular disease and depression in regards to specific numbers.
Okay. Not even if, say, someone's predisposed to diabetes and they have a low HRV?
Yeah, so it would increase the risk.
Okay.
You start to look at people that have diabetes, absolutely. They have lower heart rate variability based on many mechanisms and crossovers as to why that may be. But people that are type 2 diabetic definitely have lower heart rate variabilities. But I can't tell that diabetic to a degree that you're more predisposed to cardiovascular disease versus a depressive episode. I won't be able to make those determining factors. But what we do know is the fact that if we can control health, right, and we have these 1 factors. So say individuals that we research have very similar emotional health, social health, spiritual health, but have some sort of physical ailment, whether it's diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancers, those people will have lower heart rate variability than the controls.
Okay. So what range are we talking about? What's low versus
question.
High?
That's another one. And this is another one that people always ask, like, what is high and what is low? And it gets a little complicated because in the past, the statistics that are out there, they weren't as agreed upon as, say, heart rate, right? Okay. So, beats per minute is the gold standard. When it comes to heart rate variability, there's so many metrics out there that people are posting and have published in regards to the research articles. They look at frequency domain, which is, you start to look at the amount of frequency of a heart rhythm, and high frequency, low frequency. There's nonlinear statistics. There's standard deviations. There's numerical ones and imperial ones. And so there's all over the place a bunch of different statistics. Now, the one that majority of wearable technology, because again, the whole thing is, how do we translate into the regular person, regular human being? Mm-hmm. Majority of the wearable products that are out there, their specific measurement is called the root mean square of successive differences. So,
okay,
I know,
easy for you to say.
Exactly. That's because I've said it 1,000 times. I can relatively say it confidently now. Don't worry about the math about it all. But what it looks at, again, it's just looks at the differences. It's a way to measure heart rate variability. And so RMSSD is for short. So when you look at any literature, you look at it in the app, they'll say heart rate variability, and they would more than likely say RMSSD. And so that's the number I'm going with of. Okay. So when you look at Olympic level athletes, people that are seem to be the picture of health, they have great diets, they're very regimented, they always try to recover, that type of stuff. You're looking at, in the numbers, anywhere from about 80 to 100. It seems to be like a higher value, right? Okay. It's not uncommon to see people just over 100 into that standpoint, but that gives you an idea as to where people are. People that have cardiovascular disease, a little bit older, you see them have in the ranges of about 30 to 20. Okay. Right. And that's directly because it's directly impacting the heart. That's, and you start to see those, you see those kind of lower ranges in that side of things. Okay. So a very high value seems to be about 100. A very low value seems to be in the 20s. Okay. But it's not abnormal to see lower than that. I have a colleague that she's in her ninth, last trimester, apprenticing ninth, and her numbers are like 11 and 12. Oh, wow. Right. And so it's not uncommon. Everything's health, gets checked out, all the time. Everything seems to be healthy in that standpoint, but just, again, a lot of stress for her to go under. Okay. So you mentioned smart devices, apps. So do all of the health apps that are native to smartphones, do they have the ability to measure HRV? So there's a couple ways to be able to get HRV. So one is through wearable devices like an Apple Watch, which does have the capabilities. It's not great, but it does have the capabilities. I think all the activity trackers now, like the Fitbits, like the Garmin watches, a lot of those have the ability to capture this information from there. Then you have the higher fidelity ones, which you talk about. There's a company called Whoop, which have a Whoop band. There's a company called Aura Ring, which is a ring-based wearable. These have no display, so these aren't smart watches. They're literally just a band to calculate information, and that's what they're designed to be able to do, which then pairs to your phone. So that's one way to do it. The other way is that there's apps out there. The guy that I know over the last few years, his name is Marco Altini. He's an app. It's called HRV for Training, geared towards athletes, but it uses the camera phone on your phone to measure heart rate variability. So people wake up, they open the app, you put your finger on there with the light, it gets the PPG sense from there. He is a data scientist, PhD, so he's done his due diligence in regards to the accuracy of this. But it can be as simple as that. I think it's $10 for an app for that standpoint. And you can get wearables as cheap as $90, $99 from Fitbit that actually calculate this information.
Okay. So how often would you recommend the layperson measures their HRV?
I had this question on another podcast, the standpoint of saying this isn't something how long should you be measuring and that type of stuff. And to me, it's like, I want people to be aware of this number. So when I work with people, get them started on it, or people have been wearing for a long period of time, it's usually where you want to be able to look at something in your health to be able to change.
Okay.
Right. So, hey, I want to be able to do it. Typically, I say a baseline or understand your day-to-day variation is about anywhere from 5 to 10 days.
Okay.
So you do it from 5 to 10 days, and then you start to be able to enact a sort of behavior change, whether it's change in exercise, diet, meditation, you're going somewhere, you're doing something, you're going to classes, whatever necessary may be, you're trying to alter your health in some way.
Okay.
You start to measure what those changes are. But what's super important as we do now is we can't let this run our lives. And I see this often, way too often, where people are so obsessed with the numbers they've been tracking for so long period of time, that any little change, they're like, oh my gosh, what happened with my sleep? Why didn't I have a lot of REM sleep? Why didn't I? And they're so ingrained into that standpoint. And to me, it's like, no, things are going to fluctuate. They go up and down based on many different life changes. But the goal is that if you want to be able to alter something or change something, just making sure that it's the right thing. If you take a supplement, right, it's money. If you take time out of your day to have to go run, I mean, these are things that you could be, doing best allocated to other things, whether spending time with family or whatever. These are investments that you're doing into your health. I want to make sure that investment is worth it.
Okay.
And so HRV is my feedback of saying that investment is worth it. That dietary change from being vegan to eating meat is now beneficial for you, or vice versa. Doing more aerobic exercise versus strength training is actually more beneficial for you for what your goals are. And we can see that through heart rate variability, or changes of sleep pattern, whatever necessarily may be. It's worth you having that behavior change. And once you know that and things are kind of good, you don't have to monitor it until, maybe months down the road. I want to see where you're at compared to where you were. And see, I've been measuring my HRV for a decade now, and I haven't even checked it. I have a wearable device, the Aura Ring, which I wear, measures it passively through the nighttime. I haven't checked it today.
Okay.
I don't know what it is. And because to me, it's like I'm doing everything right, but it's just me tracking it's there. And if I want to change something, I see where I've been, where I want to be able to go. And I have zero obsession around this data, because I know everything I'm doing is pretty darn good. So I'd say start with it, make some changes. Hey, you're living life the way that it should be. Great. You know what it is, then you're good to go.
Okay. Now, this may be intuitive, yet sometimes people need to hear it. What specifically can we do to increase the activity of the vagus nerve to, what's the word I'm looking for, to activate that relaxation response?
That's a great one. And every time someone asks me this question, I bring a story on. I was in New York doing a presentation, and there was a keynote speaker of a famous longevity doctor that's there. I won't necessarily name names, but he was going through his presentation about all things longevity, health span, and trying to be healthy. And by number 193, I was like, okay, there's too many things. Right. I'm like, I get all these things are beneficial, but I'm like, I'm overwhelmed by like, who has the time to be able to do these things? Like, this is not practical information. And luckily, the first question, the person goes up there and the person goes, I love what you're saying. Absolutely. I deal with people. People don't have time to do all these things. What are the 5 things that you would do to improve the health span and longevity of an individual? And it fits in right with specifically of how to increase our vagus nerve from there. So the 5 major things that I'd say for us to get into that parasympathetic state, that rest and digest, get everything, which in turn is going to make us live longer and healthier lives, is one is they're going to be physical activity. Now, in particular, this is that low intensity type of activity. So this would be what they call, very popular now, which everyone knows is the zone 2. Zone 2 training. Zone 2 training is essentially, if you and I were having this podcast and you could kind of say, hey, and the video weren't here and my speech wasn't perfect. I was kind of, have a little bit of break in between, but it wasn't laboring me to talk. Mm-hmm. That's zone 2. I call it the talk test. So it's like, you can't have a normal conversation like this, but I'm not having to be like, hold on, let me do this exercise. And so it's that kind of, low intensity, and you're looking at about 180 minutes a week. Right. So anywhere from the 2 to 3 hours. So that's 1. Okay. 2 is going to be from a dietary perspective, have a low inflammatory diet. Now that's a very generalized statement to what's going on. Right. And because I think dietary is so nuanced in regards to what is inflammatory for individuals, right? Yes, exactly. Based on palates and all over the place, right? Into that standpoint. But all I can say is to the point of, from a general sense, as long as you're relatively trying to eat the food the way that it's made, like 80% of your diet is trying to be from, fruits and vegetables and, things that are not processed, 1,000 times or ultra processed foods, and you're hydrating appropriately, that's a phenomenal start. Okay. Right. But if you want to dive that rabbit hole, it's very, very deep of a rabbit hole. But, generalized standpoint, you're making conscious effort around your nutrition, making sure you're having close natural. So that's number 2. Number 3 is optimizing your circadian rhythm. So again, another big generalized statement. All that is from a sleep perspective, is that you're trying to go bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. Okay. From a sleep and recovery standpoint, that's the best. You set the time you want to go to bed, you set the time you want to wake up, and you keep that consistent. Okay. It may take months to be able to get there, but that is one of the most fundamental things that we can do to making sure that our body's in that natural cycle of our circadian rhythm, which is super important of resetting. Yes, there's other things we can possibly do, but to me, that's the most fundamental one from there. Okay. Number 4 is going to be is stress management, right? And dealing with our day-to-day. Again, another very generalized thing of like, deal with stress, right? Because how you and I, Glenn, will deal with stress is very different. You and I can have a work problem that arises where, I completely lose it. My emotions are all out of whack, right? Where you just isolate yourself from individuals, be able to sit down and be able to kind of do the work. Now, obviously, depending on time, those are coping mechanisms in the moment to be able to deal with it, but maybe long-term be detrimental. But those reactions to a stressful situation is very individual. Okay. So understanding how we react to very stressful situations and be able to mitigate that is super important. It takes a lot of self-discovery. This is a way deeper one that needs to be squeezed out a little bit more and dived into significantly to figure out those responses to our stressful environment and how do we mitigate those. Last is going to be connection with people. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I like to say that COVID to me was a gigantic social experiment to show how much social interactions are important to our health and well-being. Right. Because we had the physical, we know forever it's been, activity, nutrition and sleep are the big pillar of health, like focus on those things. Right. And then we had, 10, 15 years ago, the whole mental health side of things coming out of how mental health, still relatively not accepted to what's going on. But I think the conversations and understandings of how important those are to our health and well-being and longevity, how really important it actually is. And then to me, it's like, I think people underestimated the social connection of the value that has in regards to health and well-being. And I had a patient to come in soon after, we started to be able to see patients in person, and started talking about a mysterious shoulder pain that came up out of nowhere that the last 5 years of working together wasn't there before. And talking it out with her and things like that, wasn't seeing anybody in a partner, had an older mom that she was really close with, but only can talk by, Zoom, and, was working on a computer. And she goes like, I just don't remember the last time someone gave me a hug. Right.
Right.
In the last 3 years, shoulder pain hasn't been around ever since.
Yeah.
And so you cut that social connection with people, that interpersonal connection that can sometimes only happen in person. And you remove that, you start to see the mental health and the physical health just, for a lot of people dwindle. So say those are the 5 big pillars into what we can do to tap into that vagus nerve, to get into the parasympathetic and really improve our health and longevity.
Okay. Well, I work with adults who are experiencing anxiety and depression. And those are 5 things that we talk about all the time, and how to individualize those tools to help themselves be mentally healthier, emotionally healthier, physically healthier, better in relationship, et cetera. So thank you. I like I like that you said that, so people can hear specifically what they can, the simple things that they can do to enhance their own health.
Totally. And the biggest thing is, and this is why I like HRV as a feedback, is people can see that impact of when they start to be able to create the positive behavior change, and they can see it on a consistent basis. So rather than writing something down or waiting 6 months to get blood work done, what are some feedback mechanisms that I can get to know that the fact that if I engage into mindfulness, if I engage into meditation or any type of mental fitness type of techniques, or if I change my diet or do these things, I want, to support the behavior change. It's good to get that feedback for the individual. Right. And so that's where I see that complementary is to the point of like, yes, hey, we're working on these things. And sometimes, as you know, especially with people that are dealing with those things, and kind of I do the parallel of, post-concussion syndrome people, sometimes people can make unbelievable strides into something, but it's hard for them to see over the 3 months of how far they've come. Mm-hmm. The 6 months and year, it's like they have one setback. Oh, I'm back at the beginning. Yes. It's like, no. Right. And this is where that objective feedback of HRV to say, like, listen, you started at a 30, you're now at a 60, right? We were able to get more capacity for you to be able to deal with stress, right? You may have a setback now, but you've done so much work and you've doubled your ability to be able to do so. So it's that feedback. And I kind of say, you've done a lot of work, let's keep going, rather than if it falls off and it's like, I'm just going to give up because I'm back to square one. It's like, no, not at square one. You're well on your way to getting there. It's just, this is a bump in the road and let's continue on because we're making phenomenal progress. That's where I like this feedback mechanism for people and those type of conditions, because it reiterates that, hey, like, we're on the right track. You're doing a lot of the work. It provides a lot of agency into their health. Okay. Wow. This has been really interesting. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, I do have if you could narrow all of what you said down to one nugget, what is the one takeaway you want the audience to have? I think to me is I really feel that what needs to be vocalized more is the fact that we have a significant amount of control over our health and well-being, more than we think. I think a lot of it now has been taken away where with social media, it's like, oh, you can't eat this food, or you can't eat that food, or don't eat this, or don't eat that, or you have all these kind of solutions that are out there that people are thinking like, oh, I really don't know what's going on. I really have no control on what that is. And I think the medical system is geared towards that. And so I think the big message is people have a lot of agency, a lot of control over their health, more than they think that they do. And there's a lot of impact that they can do themselves to making sure that, they're being the person that they want to be able to be. Okay. I like that. I like that a lot. Now, if someone has a question or wants to work with you, how can they get in touch? Yeah, the advice of multiple people, I've finally launched a personal website. So it's gregelliott.ca. From there, I've done a lot of HRV kind of and health consultations for people. And mainly to me, it's just getting all the information laid down and kind of provide the right area that they want to be able to work in and help facilitate that a little bit more. So that's kind of that area. So I do some personal consultations from a whole health perspective. And the second is I founded a health tech startup. And so what we do is we take wearable technology. So if you have a Fitbit, you have a Oura Ring, or any type of wearables, you can pair it with our app. We ask a biopsychosocial assessment for people, 10 different factors that we know can improve, one, HRV, and two, improve your health and longevity. We ask these 10 factors, and then we show you a standardized model that prioritizes which specific behaviors are more important. The difficult part is, even I gave you 5 relatively, straightforward things to be able to work on, but what's the most important one for you, right?
Okay.
Do I need to focus on more of my physical activity versus my nutrition? Do I need to work on my emotional regulation more than my sleep hygiene? Which area of my health and well-being do I need to be able to focus on more? So if you do have a wearable product that's out there, we're adding more and more every day, but you can download our app and do the free assessment and be able to see from a biopsychosocial perspective, hey, let's do a prioritized list of where you need to be able to, if you're going to focus on one area, this is the area you'll focus in.
Okay. Awesome. And all of that information is on your website, Greg Elliott.
Yeah, absolutely.
.ca. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the information you shared. And gosh, I'm going to do some more research on my own and look into it myself, because what else it's about the whole person. So I love it.
Absolutely. And
Yes.
I want to thank you for all the work that you've done. And it's a lot of time and energy to be able to put these things on, but it's people like you that are making the difference and getting the message out there, because it needs to be from the grassroots. It takes too much time for the powers that be to make any type of change. And so it's people like you that push these things along and get this education out to individuals and be able to kind of spread this message of health and well-being the way that should be understood. So thank you very much for all the work that you do.
You're welcome. And I appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Glen Alex Show. We really hope you learned something about heart rate variability, and we'll talk to your primary healthcare provider to measure it and enhance your health.
Refresh your spirit with a nourishing thought.
Please allow me to leave you with this nourishing thought. According to Cleveland Clinic, your heart's variability reflects how adaptable your body can be. They also add that people with higher heart rate variability tend to have less stress and are happier. Conversely, low HRV indicates that your system, your body, is less resilient and struggles with change. We are dynamic creatures. We change regularly. So struggling with change is a factor in diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety, and depression, which, by the way, are the number 1 and number 2 mental health disorders among American adults. People with more time in between heartbeats tend to be less stressed and handle challenges better, hence the mind-body connection. Seems that HRV is a measure of the whole person, and HRV is considered a good indicator of physical as well as psychological health, because both are impacted by stress. So please contact your primary healthcare provider to assess your HRV and to use it to enhance your health. And if you want more information on total health and the mind-body connection, please visit glenalex.com, order your copy of my 3-time award-winning book, Living in Total Health, take advantage of the BOGA special, and book your complimentary consultation with me to enhance your health. Then tune into the next episode of the Glen Alex Show, the 2023 Positive Change Podcast Award winner. And until next time, be well.